There we go. You're gonna have to mute for me then.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Sorry.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this Creative Industry Summit Series session. This is the Arts Council's first presentation for 2025. We'll have more to come over the next 6 months, usually about once a month, so be on the lookout for those. I'm Dave Blevins. I'm the Arts Marketing Director for the Kentucky Arts Council. Today's topic is wholesaling for artists and craftspeople. Our guest presenter is Melissa Aish, owner of Reimagined by Luna. Melissa is a professional artist with 2 decades of experience selling at both retail and trade shows. She is a jury member of Kentucky Crafted, the Kentucky Guild of Artists and Craftsmen, Tennessee Craft, and Ohio Designer of Arts and Craftsmen. Before I turn it over to Melissa, I just want to go through a couple housekeeping items. This session will be recorded and it will be made available after the close of the session. We will host it on our YouTube page with our other Creative Industry Summit series. We will contact everyone via your sign-up email and send you a link to that, so you don't have to go searching for it. So if you see something from me, then you know it's out there and available for you. If you have questions, drop them in the chat box. We've got a pretty full presentation, so we're going to hold questions till the end. So any questions that you have, drop them in the chat. Me and other staff will monitor that chat box. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll go through the Q&A and we'll start working our way through those questions in the order that we got them. And then also really important, please keep your mic on mute throughout the presentation. Okay, I think we're ready to get started, so I will turn it over to Melissa.
Okay, awesome. Hey everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm gonna jump into stuff and I might move through some of the information a little quickly because there's a lot that I want to cover, but you can always visit the video later and come back to it. So first of all, I just want to say that in the beginning, like a lot of artists, I wasn't sure if I wanted to wholesale because from my perspective, it was like cutting into so much of my profit. And luckily I was sat down by a retired artist who had done only wholesale for 4 or 5 decades. And she basically laid out and said, you have to look at the money and time that you spend selling your work. So for example, with art shows, you have maybe a day of packing your car and getting ready. You have a day of travel and setting up your booth, a couple days at the show, and then a day of recovering and unpacking your car afterwards. So you easily spend 4 to 5 days at an art show selling your work. And a lot of times we don't account for the money getting paid for that part of it. With wholesale people, we are able to stay home and create, and they're the ones who are selling our work and they're marketing, they're working with their customers. So when you start to look at the amount that wholesale buyers are able to make off of your work, they definitely should be making that amount. And it also allows their stores to stay open and continue as well. So I think it's a really important relationship, and it's been really important for my business to have wholesale. I still do art shows and I sell online, but my wholesale buyers have been a backbone for me and have created stability, whereas shows and website sales, are more unpredictable and can go up and down. So your wholesale buyer relationships are important. And so I'm going to lay out just kind of what's expected there so that you can approach it in a sustainable way that you can make last as well. So we'll just jump into the concrete nitty-gritty of things. The foundation of it is pricing. If you don't have it priced well, then you're going to get really frustrated and really tired and not feel like you're making enough money. So just real quickly, you want to think about with your pricing, what are people willing to pay? What's going to make it worth your time? And what can the market actually support? The way that I do it for my work is I figure out my labor cost, my material cost, and then ideally a 15 to 20% markup Some product can afford more markup than that for profit, especially jewelry or maybe prints. But my work's pretty labor intensive, and so the market can only handle so much markup for it. But that number that I come up with is my wholesale price, which moves us into the wholesale discount. Industry standard for wholesale is 50%. So my wholesale price that I figured out on the previous slide for a small journal, for example, would be $25. So that is my wholesale price that I would sell to a buyer. But at an art show, it would be double that. So my retail price would be $50. The reason that I have consignment listed is because sometimes people mix up what they think consignment percentages should be and what wholesale percentage is. It is very standard for wholesale to be 50% of your retail cost. Consignment is 60% for the artist and 40% for the buyer. The reason I really like wholesale is because they buy outright. So I get one check for everything that they get, and then the paperwork's done until they reorder. With consignment, I don't get paid until they sell it. So I might make 10% more per item, but I'm also getting tiny checks throughout the year, as opposed to just doing one big lump sum and then you're done, and you're not having to like follow up with what's still out there, what hasn't been paid for. Wholesale to me just keeps it really clean. I do consignment with a few stores and galleries, especially if they're starting out. But for the most part, I try to keep people at wholesale just because it's actually easier for both of us. And honestly, to make yourself a viable business, you need to be able to have wholesale pricing, whether or not you're actually wholesaling your work, because you need to be paid for selling your work if you're the one who's only doing that. So you need to be able to sustain a 50-50 pricing, whether or not you decide that you want to do wholesale. So to start with, you want to do a line sheet. And this can be very, very simple. And in fact, it should be very simple because it'll be easier for your buyers. You will make this up from scratch, and you basically just want a list of your products. If you have like an item name or an item code, you can list that. You will also include your wholesale price. It may or may not have a picture with it. The example that I show here is, I think, from 2012. So was one of my first line sheets. So it's very basic and a little rough, but you know, we all start somewhere. Another big important thing is make sure that your contact information is on all the paperwork that you're handing out to people. That may seem obvious, but it's easy to overlook. So you definitely want to have your business name, your name, and your contact information, as well as your terms, which we'll go over in just a minute. Here's another example of a line sheet. I think this was the next one I did or so, and I basically just laid it out a little differently, but I wanted to be able to hand people one sheet. So this was a front and back that had my product lines, as well as it's got my terms listed and my contact information is up there. Something else that I want to mention is with some art businesses, it may be really obvious like what your product lines are and how you're going to wholesale it. For me, I had to kind of approach it creatively to figure it out, because every single thing that I make is one of a kind. And also I use reclaimed leather, so my colors are always changing. And so I had to think like, how can I sell to a buyer whilst, you know, I don't have certain colors like that I'm always going to have, but I realized I do always have certain sizes and certain closures. And so I kind of developed my product lines based on what they had in common. And the way that my buyers order colors is they may choose earthy colors or bright colors or variety. And some buyers might say, I want a variety of colors, but no yellows. And I allow for that kind of feedback with people. So if everything that you make is very one of a kind. Wholesale is still an option. You just might have to think about it a little differently than, say, someone who can produce 50 of the same pair of earrings would think about it. So don't count yourself out. There are ways around it, and stores and galleries really are wanting us to be selling handmade to them, to keep it available to the public. So again, it's an important thing to be able to offer. So if you already have a line sheet and you're kind of wanting to do the next step would be a catalog. I wouldn't necessarily start here, but you can. It's basically a more in-depth version of a line sheet that definitely also includes a photo of the product, and a brief description. With my catalog, I also have at the beginning just a description of the materials I use, the sizes, a little bit about my making process, and then on the very back of it, I have my bio. So it just has a little more information for stores about my business and product overall. If you do not have your prices listed in your catalog, you would include a price list. The reason I started doing a separate price list was because my prices changed more often than I needed to change my catalogs, and I didn't want to get it reprinted for every little price change. And also the price list has made it quicker for some of my stores who are familiar with my products to order easily. Then they don't have to flip through the little pages. They can just look at my price list and kind of circle what they want. In my catalog, it's just basically, 8.5 by 11 sheets that are folded. So it's very simple, and just kind of clear and clean. It's nothing super expensive or super in-depth, but I've found it to be effective. So, again, this is something that you can do on your own. It may take a little time, and then you've got yourself set up. Okay, so going into terms, which you will want to have listed on your line sheet and also on your catalog. And your terms are very important. And they will be something that you can refer back to if buyers have questions. So it's important that you have this established and on paper. So your minimum order, so you want to ask yourself, what do you want your opening order to be? Is this flexible or not? And then is there a required amount for your minimum reorder? So for example, I base my minimum order off of what I saw stores ordering before I had a minimum order, and I was kind of just trying to figure all of this out. And I kind of learned what a good collection of my work is so that it will actually sell at a store. So you want to make sure it's enough that their customers have options. So my minimum order right now is $350 prepaid. And then my minimum reorder, so with a store who is coming back to me for another order, is $200. Usually these are not hard numbers for stores to get to. My minimum orders tend to be pretty friendly because I'm interested in wholesale. If you are wanting to do more just like larger orders of wholesale, then you could have a higher minimum. And so some people might have a $500 minimum or even $1,000 minimum. So that's just kind of narrowing who your buyers are going to be, which is why mine is a little bit lower. I don't state in my terms that my minimums are flexible, but they are. And when buyers ask me that, I let them know that they are within reason. So for example, if somebody just wants to buy my bookmarks, I'm not going to make them buy $350 worth of bookmarks. But I will make sure they have at least a dozen or 20 so that they have a nice collection for their customers to choose from. Also, for tiny stores or galleries who are getting started, I might do a smaller minimum just so that they can get, just so they can see if their customers are drawn to the product or not. Again, some artists are not interested in doing that, but I like working with people. And so maybe I make sure they have 5 to 7 journals or just something so that I know that their customers are going to at least see a grouping of the product and not easily overlook it. The next thing you want to make sure is that you have your payment terms laid out. So, language that's important to know is prepaying, which means they're going to pay before it's delivered. POD, which is paid when it's delivered. So if you're dropping it off, they will give you a check. Then if you're shipping it, then they will send you a check or call with their credit card when the order arrives. And the other one that is very common is net 30. And this means that once they receive the product, they have 30 days to send you a check. Net 30 is what a lot of people want to move to. And also any gallery that you're working with who is government funded, it's always going to be net 30. They've got more paperwork and things that they have to go through. And also they're dependable, so you don't have to worry about not getting paid. In my terms, I have listed that I do net 30 on the third order at the discretion of the owner, which is me. So basically the first two orders, I like them to prepay so that we establish a relationship, which means that for me, the way I do it is when I have the order ready to ship, I will call them and get their credit card information. And then I put the payment through, and then I ship it out that day or the next day. And I want to do that at least a couple of times to establish a relationship. And then if they ask, I'll move to net 30. Now there are some stores who would rather just prepay each time, and then they don't have to remember whether or not they've already paid. So you kind of will figure that out with each of them as you walk through it. And I just, keep little notes on each of the stores, what they prefer. Shipping terms. So you'll just want to say something about if there's a certain mail service that you like to use and any other requirements that you have. For example, if you have really fragile items, maybe you require insurance. I don't require that with my leather goods. I don't have to worry about things breaking. I don't have shipping damages. I've maybe had it twice ever. So I do package things well, but I list in my terms that all orders are shipped through the US Postal Service unless otherwise specified. And I found most of my buyers are totally cool with that. I've got a few who need it to be UPS or FedEx, depending on where they're located and what they like to use. But for the most part, I just use the Postal Service, and everyone's been fine with that. So you can just state what is good for you. The other really important thing that you've got to figure out and state clearly is your lead time, which basically means how long until it's going to ship. And you need to have a realistic time frame so that stores can know when to expect your work. And this really matters because they're trying to stock a store. And so they're trying to not have gaps or have, too much at one time. So it's important that we're communicating as clearly and honestly as we can, so not like over promising ourselves either. So for me, what I have listed on paper is that my turnaround time is 6 to 12 weeks. And I state that my time frame will vary based on current production load. So that's what I have listed on paper, 6 to 12 weeks. Now, when a store contacts me, when I thank them for the order and, ask any questions I may have about the order, I am always sure to state what my lead time currently is. There are times of the year where I can turn it around faster. So maybe I can get some of these orders, especially if they're smaller, done within 2 to 3 weeks, and I'll let them know that. There are also times of the year where it may be longer. And I think the most important thing about your lead time is that you communicate it. So whether it's 3 weeks or 3 months, that doesn't matter as much as making sure that you tell them when they can expect it. And then that way they know whether they need to be ordering something from somewhere else in the meantime, or if they're going to have it in time for something. So, yeah, for example, like if they need it by Valentine's Day, then you can't get it, you're not going to be able to get it there in time for that, then they may decide to, place the order for that later on, and maybe next year they get in touch with you earlier. But it's just important that we're upfront about what's going to happen so that they just know how to plan things on their end. They're juggling a lot of us, so the more clear and communicative we can be, the better. The other thing that your terms can include are things like returns, exchanges, and exclusives. So let me just read you some of what I have. For returns, I have returns are permitted on manufacturer defects only. So basically, if I sent you something that wasn't made well, then I will replace it. And they must be reported within 1 week of receiving goods. So, I don't necessarily want to hear that I did something wrong several weeks later, because then it's like, did I or did a customer, mishandle something? And then I say I will inspect for damage prior to accepting the final exchange. So I'll receive the product when they ship it back. I'll look at it, and then I will send back a piece that, doesn't have a problem with it. I do offer exchanges. You don't have to do that. I state it in my terms. I say exchanges are permitted between 3 to 6 months of when a product is received. I've only had a store take me up on that maybe 2 or 3 times over the years. So for the most part, they tend to just sell it when it sells and they don't worry about that. But, with stores that, especially ones that I have an established relationship with, if they've had a piece for a while and they haven't been able to move it, we may exchange it out for a different color or something like that. Or, I work with them because I want my work to sell for them, because that means they're going to place another order with me. So, I have very clear terms written on paper, and then I work with people, within reason when it's good for both of us. So just things to keep in mind. I do say that there's an extra fee for any custom orders. I don't broadcast to my buyers that I offer custom orders because I don't have a lot of time to take that on. But I do list it in the terms just so if they ask me about it, I've already stated, that that's part of my terms. And then with exclusives, there are some stores that they want to be the only store in an area that carries your work. This happens especially in like smaller towns where, they're all kind of fighting for, people being patrons. So I do offer that as long as people are ordering a couple times a year. And also it just kind of depends on the location of it. For example, stores in Berea like to be the only one that sells your work. And so I've been approached by several of them. I have one there that sells my work. And then the other ones I just kind of keep a list of in case the one that I work with decides to not carry me anymore. I am also at the Artisan Center because in Berea, as an artist, most of us are at the Artisan Center. So, so I do work with exclusives with people, but it's, it just depends on their location, and just have a conversation about it. They'll explain why that matters to them, and it usually is for a good reason. So, yeah, so those are the terms. I also list in my terms, this is repetitive, but I will list my email. You can email an order to my email address, or you can call with an order and I give my phone number. Again, that's a little redundant, but I just want to be very clear and make it very easy for people to place orders with me. This is an example of a term card like you would get at an art show. At like a trade show, show that you're doing for wholesale. This is one from the market. And so we just covered all this information. So if I were filling this out, I would say that my wholesale discount is 50%. My payment terms are prepay with net 30 on the 3rd. My minimum order is $350. I ship via USPS, and my lead time is 6 to 12 weeks. On this term card, it says prices are shown as retail. So at the market, we have Friday, that's our wholesale day, and then we've got 2 days of retail. So everything in the booth is listed at retail pricing, and then we let the buyers do the math. So for me, they would just have to half it. So it'd be 50% of whatever's listed in the booth. For me at the show, I only put out on Friday what I want to wholesale. And then anything else that I didn't have out on Friday, I'll bring out for Saturday and Sunday for retail. There are other artists who, one of our gals, she puts stickers on what is available for wholesale in her booth so that she doesn't have to restock her booth at the end of the day with all her products. But that way a wholesale buyer can look at it and be like, oh, these are the ones that are available for wholesale. So she just puts stickers, like a colored sticker, on the ones that are for wholesale. Okay, moving into, this is an example of an invoice. You can find templates for these online pretty easily. I've made a few versions of these over the years, but basically make a simple one that works for you and what you need. So this is what works for me. I always get a 2-part invoice so that I can fill it out, and then I keep a copy and I can give my buyer a copy. Okay, how to handle product inquiries. So know your product lines, your best sellers, and how to help place an order. That may all seem really obvious, but you're going to get questions from buyers. And they ask these questions a lot. And so it's good to be ready. So you want to think through how to best, help somebody, especially put an order together for the first time if they're not sure what's going to work well for them or what their customers are going to like. Be ready to do that. One of the things that I do is I offer samplers. And so I have, I think, 3 or 4 different sampler packages that people can buy depending on if they want to do like a small order or a larger order. If they want like a more basic style, or if they kind of want a little bit of everything just to see what their customers like. You do not have to offer samplers, but it's just something that that I decided to do. I found that 10 or so years ago, people bought more of them. I don't sell as many now. Buyers tend to want to put together their own order, but every once in a while you've got somebody who just likes not having to figure it out and just wants to see how they do in their store, which is where a sampler is just really nice and an easy way to sell. You want to look at your product and your product lines from a retailer's perspectives. So if you don't know anything about these, what kind of questions would you have? And when I talk to buyers, whether it's at a trade show or on the phone or even an email, I have kind of a few sentences that I'll throw out just describing the product, why customers like it, just so I can try and anticipate a few of their questions and give them an idea of like why my product is special and might be a good fit for them. The other thing is if you don't know the answer to a question that they ask, or if you want some time to think about it, don't be afraid to just tell them that you'll get back to them. Don't feel like you have to come up with answers on the spot. I just keep good notes of the questions people have. And then the main thing is make sure you do get back to them, like you said you would. Yeah, but the buyers, a lot of them they're quick and they're sharp and they're juggling a lot of things. So they might come off as a little curt sometimes, but they're also people and like working with us. So as long as we're being communicative, don't feel like you have to make things up or feel pressured, to do anything, because that's not their intent, even if they're moving fast. So especially in the, your early days of wholesaling, you're going to be teaching them how to think about your products and how to view your products. And But they're also going to be teaching you about how wholesale works. I learned a ton from working with different buyers. So it's a really great relationship where we both are getting to learn, and it's a very cool dynamic. So yeah, so I approach my wholesale buyers the way that I do other relationships, with openness and curiosity and just really good communication. They appreciate that. So, okay, how to fill orders efficiently. So, for those of you who know me, you know that I like lists, lots and lots of lists. So this is a picture of my calendar from last November. And some of it's a little hard to see, but basically I have codes for all of my product, and this is my production calendar. So I list each day what I can get done in a day. And so depending on the art shows that I have or the wholesale orders that I need to fill, or even if I'm anticipating wholesale orders and I'm trying to build up, say, my medium-sized journals, then I put everything in the calendar. So because I've already figured out my labor for my pricing at the beginning, I know how long things take me to make. So I know how many of a thing I can make in a day and in a week and in a month. And I keep track all on this separate calendar. And that way, when a store asks me when they're going to get their order, I can look at my calendar and clearly see like how long it's going to take me to be able to make theirs, depending on what else I have scheduled in. Another thing that has helped me work efficiently is to create some things in batches, or even just parts of the process in batches. So I may get 2 to 3 small orders, and there's enough similarities with some of them that maybe I'm doing, 10 medium journals at a time and 10 small journals at a time. And then I can go through after, 4 or 5 days and finish each individual order, invoice them, and ship them out. So that's not to make stores wait, a super long time, but if it's only going to add a few more days onto it and it's going to make me more efficient and quicker overall, then that's what I'll do. So as you're making stuff, especially as you're starting to think about selling a little more in bulk, just watch yourself and see how am I most efficient. So I'll spend like, however many hours just cutting paper. And so I'll have my paper ready for when I start, sewing journals, or I'll just work on like a whole stack of just, a certain component of my pieces. And then when I need to come in and do finishing work, it makes it a lot quicker to fill orders. So that's going to be really different for each of us. So just watch yourself and take notes as to what makes you efficient. Okay, how to negotiate lead times. Just check on time. Doing good. Okay. So you want to set your lead times on paper, and we've kind of already talked about this. So you've got it on paper. It is set in your terms very clearly. But then also, like I said, I'm willing to work with people one-on-one when it comes down to it. When a buyer places an order, I will always let them know when it's going to be ready. For example, I'll have it ready to ship in 3 to 4 weeks or by late February. But I give them a pretty clear idea of when to expect it. I don't tend to give dates specifically because I don't know what's going to happen between now and then, and I might need just a little bit of wiggle room. I tend to ship before I say I will, unless they've asked for it to be shipped on a very specific day or by a specific time. But yeah, I've learned to try and not make it too stressful on myself, but I do want to be, as clear as I can. If I'm running with longer lead times, then I am just sure to communicate that. And like the example I used earlier, if they need by Valentine's Day and I can't make it happen this year, they may wait to place an order for something else later on. But it's important that we say that so that they can go ahead and be ordering things that they can get in when they need it. If my schedule's filling up with a lot of wholesale orders or maybe a lot of art shows, I will go ahead and contact certain stores who are maybe thinking about placing an order or who I know tend to order around this time of year, and just let them know, if you want it by this time, you need to go ahead and get your order in, because, you know, I'm about to get really busy. And right now I can get your order done in 3 to 4 weeks. But if we wait too much longer, it's going to be closer to 3 months because I'm going to be on the road. So again, I just lay that all out, you know, clearly with my buyers. And for trade shows, like with the market coming up, with my established buyers who've, you know, been buying from me for years, I do reach out to them and say, if you would like to pick up your order at the show, you can go ahead and place it. And then that way, you know, they save on shipping. And then what it does for me is it moves some of that workload to right now, basically, versus after the trade show, when I'm going to have a lot of orders that I'm going to start working through. And another note about the trade shows, you're going to want to take your production calendar so that as you're getting orders, you can list on your calendar, you know, depending on what people buy, how long it's going to take to make. And you're going to be able to tell people, you know, right now I'm running at 4 weeks. Later in the day, you might be closer to 3 months if you're getting a lot of orders. And that's okay. Just make sure you know, you're keeping track of when you're able to make things and get them to everyone. Okay, so some of this I maybe have covered, but how to meet delivery expectations. Do what you say you'll do. And if that's going to change, if what you told them is going to change, just make sure that you communicate that as soon as you know. So if something gets pushed back a little bit, just make sure that you're communicating that. Make sure that you both know what the lead time is, the payment terms are, and also the shipping terms, so that you're both on the same page. Also, this may be obvious, but package your work really well. Make sure that it arrives the way that you sent it, and send high quality work. This is important for the integrity of your business. I meet people at all kinds of art shows who have seen my work at some of my stores first, and were then excited to meet me in person, but they're seeing the same quality that they would get from me directly. They're seeing that in my stores and galleries. And it's just important to have that kind of consistency and high standard for yourself. Okay, how to get wholesale orders. So these are just some examples. One would be doing a trade show. For example, I do the market, and Friday is the only day for wholesale buyers. Wholesale shows are a whole different experience than retail shows. They're going to feel slower and then kind of more intense when the buyer's there, because they're trying to understand your product, wrap their head around it, and then figure you out into their budget for their store. So it can feel kind of intense when they bring you all these questions at once. So that's part of why it's important to try and anticipate what some of those questions are, so you are able to answer them and not feel so put on the spot. But it's going to be quiet in between buyers for the most part. But yeah, you'll want to bring your line sheet, bring your business cards, invoices, your production calendar, and a calculator, and just, you know, be ready to take those orders. Another way to get wholesale orders is to actually contact stores and galleries that you want to be in. I learned very early on that they don't really like cold calls. So showing up with your work and expecting to talk to somebody is not what people are into anymore. They would prefer for you to set up a meeting. So I usually email a store with a short pitch about my work, what it is, why I think it's a good fit, and a few photos. And then I'll ask a time to come by if it's a store that's within traveling distance, or can we set up a phone appointment so you can ask questions? I don't tend to do that as much anymore, but that is definitely how I got started. And sometimes artists will tell me like, oh, you need to check out this store. Like, you would be a great fit for them. They've always been good to me. Then I take note of those buyers and contact them that way too. So, and you can even use your artist friends as reference. Like, so-and-so says that she works with you and really appreciates it and said that I'd be a good fit and that I should contact you. And I also do a wholesale website. I do indyme.com. There are other ones out there. I've been on this one since like 2012 or something. And basically it has a platform that you will fill out. You apply to get in, and then you have your wholesale website. You pay a flat fee for the year. Right now it's $548. And then you keep 100% of what you make. And you can do additional advertising and whatnot with them. I do a little of that, but there's always room to grow there if you want. The other thing that's very cool about IndieMe, well, they do have galleries and stores from all over the United States, so you're getting just like a wide variety of people seeing your work. But also the people who run it are great about answering questions and helping you. Like if you're not getting a lot of orders, you can always ask them like, what could I be doing to get seen more, or to get more buyers? Or if you're having trouble setting up the website, they're great with all of that. So they've been a really good resource for me. And yeah, I've appreciated having them. So just a couple of closing words. Don't feel like you have to wholesale all your work. There may be some items that you don't want to make a lot of because they're irritating or just so time intensive that you want to make a few to sell to people, but you don't want to make 50 of that thing. Then it's okay to leave those for retail and not for wholesale. Maybe you also have some pieces that are just too time intensive that you don't feel like you can put a wholesale price on them and double it, then that's okay too. We all have stuff that we can wholesale, and it's okay if you just have a few product lines that you're able to offer. What I've found is that since 2020, a lot of artists aren't doing as much wholesale, and stores and galleries are really appreciating those of us who still are. They don't mind waiting for it, but they do, just want to know what to expect from you and when to expect it. And they do like hearing from us. And I've had multiple ones of them say that, they get busy with things, and it really helps when we reach out and ask if, do you need to restock? Are you getting low on anything? Do you want me to put you on my schedule? So what I do is I send out a wholesale newsletter, an email. I usually send it out twice a year. So I send it out, January or February before I get really busy asking for orders. And then I'll do it in July or August asking for Christmas orders. And I let people know any new products that I have that I'm wholesaling, and also let them know what my current lead times are so they can know how soon they need to be placing their orders in order to get it in time for spring or to get it in time for Christmas. The other thing that you will have with some people is they will, especially at a trade show, is they may give you a specific date that they want the order shipped. And sometimes they'll also place like, 2 or 3 orders, and they'll be like, okay, this is my April order, and then I want this order shipped in September. And they just want to go ahead and write out their orders for the year, so then they don't have to worry about it. And, and they know that they're already on your radar and already on your schedule. So that's another thing that can also happen. So I know I covered a whole bunch of information, but if you have questions, let's go over those.
Okay, let's see here. I've been keeping an eye on this chat. So I'm gonna go back. One of the first questions that we had was, what program do you use to create your line sheet? One person mentioned a software called Artwork Archive. Is there something else that you use, Melissa?
Yeah, so I'm pretty basic and old school with this stuff. I use Publisher for line sheets and invoices and everything. So it's just been easy for me. So that's what I use.
We have a question about shipping. It's how do you estimate the shipping costs before the order is placed? I guess so that you can,
Yep.
you don't undersell yourself on what it's going to cost to ship the product.
I don't ever estimate my shipping. I mean, if a buyer is wondering what shipping might be, I can, give them an idea of it, but I don't ever, take payment for an order without knowing what the shipping is. That's part of why I don't call with their credit card until an order is ready, because when I call them, I already have it packaged and I've weighed it. I use Go Shippo or Pirate Ship online, and I just have a little scale that I will weigh my packages on. And so when I am calling a buyer, I already know the total, and that means I know the total of all the products, but I also already know the shipping exactly. And then, I add just like $1 to $2 to cover my packaging costs for the shipping. So not a lot, but just a little bit to help with that.
So if you're taking an order, for instance, at the market, you're going to give them a price for the product, not necessarily a specific price for the shipping as well.
That's right. I'll tell them that I will let them know the shipping once I have the order complete.
Got it. All right.
Now,
Go ahead.
oh, let me say with that, if you can, you've probably shipped some of your work in bulk before and at least have an idea of like what say a medium-sized box would be. So like a medium-sized box for me would be $15 to $20 to most locations. If you're doing ceramics, it's going to be a lot heavier than that. So if a buyer is just wanting to know like the idea of what shipping costs, because maybe they're afraid that some of the shipping is going to be really high, maybe just put some of your stuff in a box and just have an idea. And then you can tell the buyer that you'll let them know for sure once you weigh it, but this is what it tends to be. So
Yeah, and of course, you can always negotiate if it's going to be a really high shipping price. If they would like to pick it up, if they're going to be in town, if you are in town visiting other places to do a drop off, whatever it might be.
yeah.
Obviously at the market, buyers can pre-order and then pick up orders if they've already done that prior to. So I know there's a few ways around it. But yeah, like something that's really heavy like ceramics or something that's oversized, like a really, really large um, original piece of artwork, it may not weigh that much, but if it's oversized, then it's gonna take the shipping price up. The next question was about your samplers. They asked, how do you price your samplers? Any input on that?
Yeah, so I've done it a couple different ways. Um, in the beginning, what I did was I added up what, per piece a sampler would be. So if it's 5 journals, I would add up all the wholesale price and that would be the total. And in the beginning, I would do like just a little discount, whatever I felt like if I could take off $5 or take off $10 so that to kind of encourage them to try a sampler. In recent years, I don't have a discount on my samplers because I don't really feel like I can afford it right now. But I just still offer the samplers for the price that they would be if you bought them individually anyway. But it just makes it an easy way for people to order if they want to go that route.
Yeah. Let's see. Gary asks, is the line sheet something you print and hand directly to the store owner?
Yes, or I email it. So I do the ones that are printed for a trade show or if I'm going to actually see a buyer. I also send them out with orders for people to place reorders with me. But if I'm working with someone more long distance through email, I also have a PDF file that I will send them so that they can, print it on their end. And I usually offer, like, if you want me to snail mail you one, just send me your address and I'll do that too.
Got it. So at show like the market, have printed copies.
Yes.
Um, outside of that, have a PDF version that you can email out. And then also include a printed copy if you're shipping anything as well.
Yeah.
Great. Let's see here. Next question. For 2D fine artists, are retailers looking mostly for bulk prints? Specifically for people creating, like, for instance, scratch board, it's a one of a kind item.
I think there's probably buyers for both, to be honest. I think there are a lot of buyers who want to do prints and there's buyers who want originals. It just depends on what kind of store they have. So that might be something that you can ask buyers that, like, what is it they're looking for? And especially as you build relationships with buyers, you can ask them, what do you see, stores wanting more of? Because they might be able to give you a better answer than I am.
Yeah, that's fair. And I've seen, in those cases, not only prints, but also things like greeting cards. I've even seen some artists do magnets, bookmarks, like you mentioned, just kind of anything that's at a lower price point that, you can offer that gets your imagery out there.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Let's see here. Working my way down. Are you obligated as the artist to provide a display if you have pieces that are better displayed on the wall?
Yeah, that's a good question. You are not obligated to provide a display as an artist. Some artists do. And so you can kind of decide how you want to do that. Some stores already know how they want to display things and have that set up, so you don't need to worry about it. They may even tell you that. And then some stores who, they might ask you, well, how would you suggest I display it? And I do have people ask me that especially with, the journals or the book necklaces or something. Some artists do provide their own display. If there's a certain way that you want things to be presented or hung, like on the wall, then you can provide that. And yeah, that's kind of totally up to you.
Yeah, and I think it would probably be fair to say if you have a store that you're continually selling to, that might be the type of store that you would offer to have a specific display, especially if it's going to be something permanent, rather than just they bought a couple things and they may or may not buy in the future.
Yeah.
Okay. Just give me a second to go through a few more of these. So one of the follow-up questions about the sampler is, like, exactly what a sampler set is. Is it a bit of everything? Is it something that the store will break up and sell individually? Or is it, or is it a one of each for the customer to buy together? So sampler, as here's a group of things that you sell to the store. Did they sell it also as a group or to break out into individuals?
They'll be selling it individually. So a buyer can buy, 2 of this, 3 of this, 4 of that of your products, or they could buy a sampler that might have, 1 of each of those things all together, but regardless, they're going to sell it individually to their customers. So the customers don't know that they bought a sampler. It's just a way to make it easy for them to buy if they're not sure where to start. And it can be one of a few different things, or you can do kind of a grouping that whatever you think would be like a nice group, so that when they put it on a display, it's going to attract customers and they're going to sell. So.
All right, great. Let's see here. Question on how do you calculate labor and time? Did you at some point actually time yourself, or is it an estimate?
Nope, I literally time myself, and every few years I retime myself because I get quicker. So my profits get bigger. So yeah, I don't estimate that. I found that I was trying to estimate that, but then when I actually time myself, I was wrong. So it helps to just straight up time yourself.
Perfect. All right. Looks like I'm at the bottom of the Q&A chat. We are about 4 minutes out. Any other last minute questions? Throw them in chat real quick. Looks like we just had one pop up. Let's see here. Just give me a second. This one's a little long.
Okay.
So Melissa, if you have an interested gallery or buyer and have met in person, have communicated that you will reach out to them later, and you have, how do you keep that engagement of the continuing conversation?
Okay,
And
so
she
saying
says
that,
that,
go ahead.
sorry, she says that she's noticed that this person has noticed that shops and galleries that they've made personal contact with about wholesaling, it's hard to keep a conversation going or get a response to emails after you send an email. So you've made the personal contact, but then when you follow up, you're having issues reconnecting with them.
Yeah, usually I try a few times, 2 to 3 times. I may make a phone call and, sometimes you can get them on the phone or you can leave a message for them. If it's not somebody that you have a relationship already established with, then, you know, they, they may have liked the idea of it, but they're, too busy or distracted or had something come up to follow up. So I let it go and I just move on to other stores and galleries. Some of them, maybe I try again, a little later, but, yeah, sometimes people act interested and then when it comes down to it, they're not going to place an order or they're not going to place an order yet. And so you can just try, a few times in a few different ways, but I would at least pick up the phone once, in addition to at least a couple follow-up emails, just because people meant to call you back and forgot. I would try even harder with people that I already know me, because usually there's a reason that they can't get back to me. Maybe, something's come up in their personal life or whatever. So I'll just let a little time pass and then I'll try again.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, we all get too many emails, and a phone call with a voicemail can go a long way. They may even be the person that picks up the phone that day at the gallery. I would recommend kind of what you had talked about earlier. If you are following up with a buyer in that situation, don't just send them the email that says, "Hey, I'm this artist and we met at this." Make sure you include your line sheet and some visuals, because that might jog their memory more than just the "Hey, we met at a show."
Yeah. Yeah. The pictures are really important because they're seeing a lot, and those shows are really overstimulating for buyers because they're trying to get through so much material. So definitely include pictures.
Yes. All right. Well, that looks to be all the questions that we have. So we'll go ahead and wrap up. For everyone who's on, we appreciate you sticking with us for an hour. I will make this recording available later from our YouTube channel. We have all the emails from signups, and we will be in touch once that is posted. And just thank you to the Arts Council staff for putting this on and monitoring it. And of course, a big thanks to Melissa for being our presenter today.
Yeah. Thank you all too. I appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everybody. We're going to close it out.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.